that end to Boulevard Lakes, when you get into the south end of the city, right, 4 lanes on one street.
So it's just,
No, there's
I don't know what that would look like, but it was just a topic that came to mind.
Oh, yeah, okay, we're good.
That's
Commercial.
30 seconds.
Yeah, to recruit people to,
So we're streaming already? Okay, I'm gonna move it up a little closer.
I can give you this what you can see.
Oh, yeah, okay. So,
Why is King Street Bridge still closed? Why is
Just,
people aren't doing anything about it?
part of it, yeah. All the cities.
Okay, so our fourth session is called Building Audience Distribution, Social Change Using a Website and Social Media. So we're just going to be talking about sharing your vision with community as it evolves and increasing the effectiveness of your finished project. And so we're going to just talk a little bit about not how exactly to use, but how you can use a very free and simple websites with social media, etc., to engage people. So, and I was going to ask Ron if he would maybe begin, since I found the website, just talking about this particular project.
Okay, first the thing you have to appreciate is I'm not an artiste like Riaz or others. So I got a lot of people to do things for me. I have ideas, and I also teach history, but I'm an academic. And what I'm interested in is reaching students. And I've done a lot of research on, how to reach your average young person. And one of the key things is that they have a limited time span or attention span, which means that it's difficult sometimes to get them to sit through a 45-minute or an hour-long documentary to do things. So this is sort of the end product of a much bigger project. The bigger project, it's called Engaging the World, as you can see. The bigger project is a television series that Kelly and I, if I can figure out, did in French and also in English for TVO, the French equivalent of TFO, the French equivalent of TVO. And basically we went around the world and we interviewed researchers, people who research development issues. And there's a Crown Corporation. You all know of CEDA. This one's called the IDRC. It's owned by the Canadian government. It's a Crown Corporation. And it gives money to researchers in the developing world with the simple idea that they live with the problems every day. So why don't we give them a chance instead of sending down some brainy Canadian who knows nothing about the society to tell them how to live their lives. And they've been doing it for over 40 years. And this was part of so there's a television series that goes with it, and it's online, so you can see me and my partner Bruce Muirhead, and we went around the world and we interviewed people with Kelly directing the series, and they're in French and English, and there's a bunch of them there, and they're all an hour long, but that's a little bit much for students. We also, I might as well show you since I'm right here, it didn't change today. Something's happening there. No, that's the TV series, sorry. Why am I don't know.
engage the world?
No, I'm trying to get it onto, I'll try the people. Oh, it's just opening up here, okay.
Just slow.
It's not a Mac, so the elements. If I click on the elements, oh well, now what's going on? They're closing as I click on them. Does anybody know how to use a PC? Like this is, I just want to click on that. I want to show you the elements, not the people. I want to be able to do this. And then on what? Okay, if you could, I've got a technical assistant who's going to get the elements. So however he did that, you have to learn to do that on the PC. So these are the elements, and we, in addition to a series, oh, that's not the one then, sorry, the project. Anyhow, we published a couple of books. That's what I want to point to. So if you can't get students to read books about development issues, then we decided we would do something else. So we shot 180 hours of tape in all of these interviews, and we used probably about 5 hours of it in the series. And we were left with 175 hours of interviews and all kinds of things. So the original idea was to, once a week, put up a short clip, 1.5 minutes to maybe 3 minutes long, of the outtakes. So all we did was we went to the editing room and we looked around on the floor and we picked up the bits of the interviews that we didn't use, and we attached questions to them. So we already had the answers, but we put up better questions than the original questions. We had good answers, so we could put good questions on them. And the idea was we'd send this out once a week, and it would be sort of a Friday morning thing, and everybody at the International Development Research Center and on their bulletin, and the people that were, you know, engaging the world, around the world that tied into it, would get a little something to think about for the Friday, right? And then they could talk about it at coffee and that sort of thing. Well, and if I can get this to work. Anyhow, I'll get somebody that knows how to get it to work. On this page, what am I not doing?
That's hard enough.
Okay. Anyhow, this is the page to go to. Explains how it works. This is a software program that was invented by a German fellow, and I have friends at Concordia University that are working with them and helping to improve it. It's called Korsakov, but it's spelled Korsakow, K-O-W, and it's a nonlinear documentary film program. And let's just start engaging the world, and then you don't have to listen to me for too much longer. So I should be able to do this. Do I have to hit the plus?
No.
No. Okay. Hit the little box. Well, why does it?
Does it for him.
And there's no sound. No, there's no sound. Anyhow, when you click
No, we'll
it,
get the sound.
this is the introduction, and Barbara Ward was a famous environmentalist.
come automatically to sound.
And anyhow, this is sort of the opening of it, and there's an intro. You don't need the sound, you've got me already. It explains how it works, but it's very, very basic. Those questions I told you about, they're all at the bottom here. So remember, there are 52, this is far too elaborate, right? So when we get sound, you'll be able to see me. And what do these researchers and the people on the front lines of international development think about some of the challenges they face? Find out by following your interests as they lead you through an exploration of themes in international development. Okay, we'll just pause that. You can pause it sometimes. Engaging the World uses Korsakow Cinema database software. Maybe double click. Anyhow, this is just an introduction that we threw together. And now what you're going to be asked to do, so you do this at home, or on your phone, and that's an important part of all of this. You just choose a question that interests you. Now, behind the scenes, it's driven by keywords. So some of the keywords are women, agriculture, maybe pollution, environment, children, health, ICTs, a variety of different things. And anyhow, you just take your cursor and you click, or double click in this case, or triple click, or just get three I'm sorry.
There are three pros. Pro nature.
So let's pause. This is MS Swaminathan.
Oh,
Apparently he's a member, he's 90-some years old, he's a member of the Indian Parliament now, or he's a senator now, I think. Anyhow, so we just picked a question. I didn't give you a chance. Maybe I should just give you a chance to why don't we re-ask just 1 second? Why don't we pick one question? So read which question would you like an answer to? That's probably the best way to do it. Why don't we do number one?
Number one, yeah.
How can information and communications technology be utilized not only as a social media, but as a tool for agricultural and economic production?
Click on it.
You click on, double click and move your cursor off it. So this is Indira Gandhi, not the Indira Gandhi, but a woman named Indira Gandhi. And she works at Swaminathan's Agricultural Institute in Pondicherry in India. And she is, well, discussing in very succinctly how you can use information technology, to improve lives. So we're not going to go through it. This isn't a course on international development. But the important thing for you to understand with this program is that while she is speaking, 4 new questions have come up. So with this program, you can't go back. Once you hear her answer, you have to make another choice, and you choose from the 4, any 4, and you'll never get the same questions twice, right? So what it does is it allows you to go through the information the way you want to go through it. So if you're just interested in the fate of women in the developing world, you'll eventually, there'll be a question, here's pro-women, pro-poor, etc., and all of that sort of thing. Once you click on this, the next questions that are generated will be tied to this question. So it's in all likelihood, there'll be another question about women in the developing world. But eventually, you'll run out of answers, right, or questions on women, but they'll be linked to other things, maybe agriculture. See, this is agriculture, so there'll be agricultural questions. Indira Gandhi's a woman, so I'm sure that in the background we put women, because she's also spoke about women and children. And anyhow, you go through the whole thing and you do it at your own pace, and you follow the information as you want to receive it. And you can walk away from this now and come back tomorrow, and it'll remember where you are on your computer, remember where you are, and you'll be able to pick it up. So why is it constructed like this? Well, let's go back to the students and attention spans. These are only 1.5 to 3 minutes long. And the idea was to produce something that would allow young people with smartphones in riding the subway in Toronto, where they really, really need an education, those young guys, because they don't have the rocks and the trees and all the stuff we have up here. Anyhow, give them an opportunity to watch something between subway stops on their way to school or on their way to a friend's house or whatever it is, and not overburden them with having to sit down for 45 solid minutes, right? So I did this with international development, but the people in Montreal are experimenting in a lot of other ways, and I'll just give you one little example. They have, there is a wonderful little short Korsakov documentary on queer refugee youth, or it might be gay refugee youth. So you can appreciate that people come from other countries and other cultures, and they might happen to be gay, and they arrive in Canada, and they're sort of caught between, tradition in Canada and all of this. So they've got about 4 or 6 young people, and you get to follow their stories. You don't have to follow one story. You can just watch it randomly if you want. But you have an opportunity to follow sort of Jose through a series of things, but eventually you run out of Jose, so you got to move on to somebody else. But the idea is to give people an opportunity to watch a film develop as they want to see it, follow their interests, and allow them to interact with it. Now, so that's just the students, right? And students, you can expect they're young, they've got other things on their mind. I'm also an educator, and I work with academics, and this lab that I have over here was intended to support my work, but also the work of other academics. And the big problem for academics and documentary film, they all want to make a documentary film. Everybody's got an idea. They haven't got the means of doing it. So this is a very, very easy way for people to put together a documentary, because a documentary is really complicated. You have to have a story, you have to figure out how things line up, you have to have a certain amount of expertise. And a documentary that is linear is designed by the director and the editor and the filmmakers, and we make all of the decisions. So you have to be prepared, if you're going to direct a documentary, to make those decisions and take the documentary from an introduction to a conclusion. So this is also something I sell to other academics. It doesn't have to have 52 clips, it can have 3 clips. It can have 20, usually they have about 20 clips or thereabouts, right? About the same length. And they don't have to be video. You can use photographs, you can use text, you can use anything that is friendly to the digital world. And you can also, with this, I haven't done anything with it, but there's space on either side of it. So I can put text and I can put links if I want. When it comes to this stuff, I could give you links to articles that deal with the subjects that they're talking about, agriculture in India, or women and reproductive choice in another part of the world or something like that. But the important thing is that you can take any subject you want, say traffic in Thunder Bay, and in very short order, you don't have to be a professional documentarian. You can put something together that people will watch. And the reason they'll watch it is because it's forgiving. This was done with professionals, so it's all nice and slick, and the sound is nice and everything like that. But for the most part, my colleagues, don't know which end of the camera to, be looking through. They don't know how to hold a microphone. They don't have the budget to, hire a crew and that sort of thing. But they can manage. They've got smartphones, and they can manage if they really want to produce something. So this is a friendly kind of way for them to work, but it's also something that you can forgive, because if you only have to watch a minute and a half of it, how bad would it have to be for you to change the channel? And you can change the channel, right? You can skip to the next one if the sound is bad or the picture's bad, or you don't like whatever's going on. So you've got that option as well as skipping ahead. You can't go back, right? So you have to pay attention, but you can skip ahead. So this was just one of the things that we did with a project, and I'm not sure whether we have another session on this, but appreciate. We started out with the idea, first of all, of writing a history of the International Development Research Center, 40 years. So we did that. Then I organized a conference, and we put together papers by a lot of people that are in here, and they presented academic papers. But they were really, the academics were speaking to academics. The television series was speaking to people who had television, and they use it in classrooms and that sort of thing. And then we had these other elements, and we wanted to make the most of it and churn out as much as we possibly could. It's not like we're making money off of it, so wasn't profit motive that motivated us. It was just reaching out to different sectors. I talked about smartphones, but there's a term, it's outdated now, I suppose, and it was the 4-screen Canadian. So the average Canadian has 4 screens. Now they probably have about 6 of them with the invention of little watches and who knows what else with screens. But your telephone, your laptop, your television, your laptop, your desktop, and your smartphone. Those are your 4 screens. And all of them, you interact differently with all of them. And so when you're designing these kinds of things, you try to design for all 4. You have to be very good, I suppose, to make everything work perfectly and be as appealing on a 4-inch screen as on a 42-inch screen or something like that. But you have to take those kinds of things into account when you're designing it. It's a very simple program, much simpler than any of the programs that Riaz was showing you, I'm sure. It used to be 100% free. Now they charge a little bit because they do have to maintain it, but it was open source when it started out. And I think for about $50 or something, you can buy the program now. And you can start producing your own nonlinear documentaries. And that's, to me, sort of a key to education. And then finally, the way that I also use this is in the classroom, because I teach the history of international development. And the problem with students, and I apologize to the students in the room, is that they never say anything, right? So I'm stuck speaking for like 50 minutes nonstop. I can do it. I can do it for far more than that. I won't do it, but I can do it. But you want to interact with the students, and in second year or something like that, first year, they don't open their mouths, except for the one kid that you can't shut up, right? But you don't want to hear always from the same one. So this is an easy way of doing it. I show a couple of these clips at the beginning of the class as an icebreaker, and they're new and challenging, and it's really, it's not me, it's the people that we interviewed are some of the smartest people in the world. And they give you wonderful, answers to questions that we fabricated, to make it sound even smarter. But the idea is to get students to react to it, and they do react, at the beginning of a class to an icebreaker, and then it makes life so much easier for me and for their educational experience, because they've opened up a little bit. They've had to, express ideas about something. And then later on, when I really want them to speak, to make a presentation in 10 minutes or something like that, they're far better, in much better shape than if I just sort of, it was always just pulling teeth. So this is sort of like pulling teeth, only we've got a door, we've got a string, the tooth is tied, slam the door, and it's over, and they're happy, and we move on, right? So this is what we did. This is IDRC, Canada's little secret.
When did you do it?
I guess I finished it a couple of years ago, but with a series, I forget when it came out. Kelly might know.
Like 2009.
2009, I guess, was the series.
So that came much later when you really wanted to.
Well, I started with the 52 clips, and then I had to discover Korsakov. I had to talk to people because it was, it's a recent sort of innovation.
Yeah. Did you meet the guy that stuff?
Not the Berlin guy. Do you know him?
Yeah.
I've read his stuff.
Yeah.
But I work with Steve High at Concordia. He's got the Center for Oral History at Concordia. He was Canada Research Chair. And they invested in, helping develop the software and make it friendlier. And they've done all kinds of things with it. And you should think about doing things with it too. Because I talked about the queer youth, but just think about how to tell a story. I heard stories about residential schools and all of that sort of thing. It's really complicated and complex to get somebody and get their story over 45 minutes. It's much easier to take sort of the best bits of it and construct it in such a way that they get to say something, but then you can add all the other information that they won't give you because you haven't asked the question or they're not in a position to do it. So if you take residential schools, you can have somebody's experience, but right beside it you can have sort of a graph, and it can show you how many people went to residential school, for example. Or you can have a picture of a residential school. You can play with all kinds of different images and different information. This is just talking heads for the most part, but that's what we had to work with. So anyhow, that's engagingtheworld.ca.
And we had some kind of, in the early phases, there was some kind of complicated with compressing of the video. That's why it looks all pixelated and stuff. But maybe Riaz will be able to help us reload those on the back end of the program. It was just, it's all HD footage, but then anyway, but well, it's just because it's transferring from one database to another database, and anyway, it drives me insane every time I see it.
I'm a moving target, right? I make films and I do projects like this, but I also have a number of other things I'm doing. So I get it out, get it done, and I don't make any money off of it. So there's little incentive for me to be perfect. Yes.
Are these the original questions, and is there more than one respondent to a specific question?
Well, the way we started out with the questions was we asked everybody, and we interviewed Vandana Shiva, Lloyd Axworthy, Maggie Cadley Carlson, who was president of CETA at one time, M.S. Swaminathan, the father of the Green Revolution is who he is, and all of these great people. And one question we asked them, we said, okay, now we've heard whatever you have to say about whatever we were asking you, but what would you say to young Canadians, right? Why should they care about whatever it is that you're doing here? And it was remarkable because they all, you'd think that they would all say, well, you should care because, it's one world. But, the variety of different kinds of responses we had from people about why anybody should care about their problems. So that's how we sort of got started. So every interview ended with this big question. And we got a lot of these come from it. And then, just in the editing process, we cut things out that we wanted to keep. So this was a way for, filmmakers, if you know how tough it is to leave stuff on the floor, this was a way to grab some of that and put it back into a project. And then, those were more or less the questions, but, like you ask a question and they answer the question and then they answer 5 more. So we had to make the question succinct so that the viewer sort of understood the question. There was no preamble like I'm giving you or anything like that. It had to be, 10 words or less or whatever it was. And had to sort of be attractive and indicate something about what they were going to say. So all the questions were rewritten.
Mm-hmm. But when you're playing through, the viewer is, choosing questions, they would get one respondent to
Just
that
one, yeah, there
question.
aren't multiple respondents to the same question.
Right.
Every question is different. You could do it with the same, ask the same question to people. You could do that. That wasn't this project, but that would be one way of doing it.
Working with the software.
Yeah,
that way.
well, just go on the street and ask people one question, what do you think of this? And, they do it on the nightly news all the time, but you could do some variant of it with this very easily and get a lot of different opinions on a particular subject. And it gives people a chance to think, because you can pause it, right? And you can stop and think about what they just said. You're online, so you can easily go off and Google the person or Google the subject and get more information. Are there other questions about this little project? Yes, yes.
What's the difficulty of the software, using this software? What's the learning curve? It's really straightforward.
It's very,
Here's the guy who did it.
He loaded it all up for me, but I had to you have to come up with keywords. So that was the big challenge, I suppose, keywords. And the keywords, I use the names of the individuals because I think Vandana Shiva has 3 of them, so that you get one Vandana Shiva, you might get another one. And then a bunch of keywords that you can't have one keyword for one clip. They all have about 5 keywords so that they come up randomly. And
then there's more chance of more keywords.
So there's an exponential number of ways that you can watch it. So no 2 people watch the same movie with this, right? No 2 people see the same thing because they all make different choices. And 52 times, however many, it's unlimited the way that people look through it.
So here's the Corsica website.
Oh, you're able to click, all the
Yeah,
information
and they
is
have
on
all
the
kinds of
website.
examples, so then you can see all the possibilities of what people are doing with it in terms of storytelling and doing information.
And anyhow, I find it very approachable and very easy thing for people who don't have much experience or money to put together a documentary to tell fairly straightforward stories. So we're using it here at Lakehead. We have people that are using it. They work with First Nations communities, and it's part of look at oral histories and looking at collecting interviews and that sort of thing, putting them together in a way that is kind of friendly and accessible.
Okay.
It's Canadian.
Yeah, and
No,
No.
It's a German man.
yeah,
Oh,
but
okay.
he's working with the Canadian
Florian,
very
you see
closely.
Florian's news?
Yeah.
Florian is the guy that started it.
Yeah, Florian's wherever he is there.
Mm.
Anyhow, it's it's an interesting thing, and
I didn't know that it's still alive.
pardon?
I didn't know that it's still alive.
Yeah, well, they are keeping it alive, and and it works better with a Mac than a PC because PCs don't. That's yesterday. The Mac is one click, and you don't need to hire somebody.
So there it is, US $50 for a project under 3,000. So for academic or
Yeah, and
research project or-
other academics are using it, of course, and we have all kinds of things. So it's not overly expensive, and they're very nice about working. The people in Concordia, anyhow, are very nice about working with
So
people.
Concordia
through things.
established a partnership?
There's some sort of partnership. So they're doing they're upgrading the program
Okay.
at Concordia. I'm sure they work with Florian. It's just that this is how they do it. And my friend Steve Hyde did a presentation using this, and he gave everybody laser markers or laser pens, and that's how they triggered the questions. So he was making it. So it's not just a question of a documentary film. He was making a presentation and used it sort of like a PowerPoint, if you will, but gave people an opportunity to, instead of shout out, which one they wanted, they had the laser things and they could, press the button and, do an interactive kind of thing. So if you can think of a way of using it, right, it doesn't have to be for academic purposes. It can be for anything. It's a way of engaging your audience and engaging people in a different kind of way. I think I should let somebody else say something.
Okay.
Then.
Yeah. So, Amit, you've done some, really big And could you talk about, you know, we've seen a little bit of love letters from the future, like how,
Yeah, that was quite a while ago, so, you know, when I think about
Or-
it right now, so
or,
it's a project that did very well at the time, but you know, it's also, if you look at it in a, you know, tough eyes today, today's reality, I think today it would be very different, you know, because, and I spoke a little about this morning, that there's so much content today in the last 5 years, like it's unbelievable how it's growing and growing, so to get attention is like, I think we have to change our strategy all the time, because somebody's doing something and then it's an old news, and you know, so it's like, what actually gets attention? I think it's an art by itself to think how, and sometimes very simple things that you don't even think of, like, you know, the story of the story about the baby. I think somebody told you that the story about the baby with the tea
oh, the
bag.
tea bag, yeah, oh, the guy with the tea bag, waking up the guy.
Who mentioned it?
Yeah, me, I was just saying about that
Yeah.
2-minute film.
Yeah, so you know, like, you know, at the end of the day, cats and babies that gets the most viewing on YouTube. And I mean, I just want to be realistic about what we are fighting with, right? Because it used to be different departments. It used to be you're making films, you're making art, there's different competition there, there's kid stuff, there's youth stuff, there's commercial stuff. But I think the interesting and the thing to think about today is that everything mixed together and everybody is running on the same floor, right? Because to get attention of audiences and with the online opportunities and tools and, you know, Facebook and all the platforms of social media, and I'm not talking about the new platforms of, you know, different storytellers of VR and you know, all these you know, new devices to get attention, and this is still not as crazy as, you know, other platforms that goes online, because it's really you know, you can do these things on places, but so, you know, that going back to Letters of the Future, so, you know, I have now a few years of experience to see how things change dramatically. So what can I actually learn and, you know, share with you, honestly? I don't know, really. It's not because I'm totally stupid, but because I'm really honest right now, because right now in another room with other people, some people are creating it, and we're going to see tomorrow, you know? And then after they will create it, it will be great, nobody could do it again because it was done already. So, you know, we live today in a kind of very interesting time that there's, like, you know, if we think about the way we think about history and about how we can take things from one generation or one experience to the other, there's a kind of very disconnected situation now that what can I learn? How can I do it differently? I don't know. It's like a very interesting learning curve, I think, that I don't know, I still think about it myself. I share it with some of my colleagues, and I don't know. So, you know, I can share with you, for example, that while we were working on the project that either happened or not, this French-Canada here, you know, ANA project. So, you know, we thought that, you know, we had a big plan for social media. So, you know, we thought about the fact that, you know, people in Canada are going to see part of the story. People in France are going to be part of the story. That would be interesting to start a kind of curiosity, like if we're blocking really that people can't see it in the same country. How can we create interest between people about sharing the story or not? Or, you know, giving prizes to those who will won't immediately wait and maybe see it on the, you know, application, that we give an opportunity for people to see everything together and maybe pay some money for that, etc. So it's really interesting. What I'm trying to say to you is that from one hand, there's a lot of room for creativity. On the other hand, you know, another thing that we see more and more, that corporations are really getting into the game more and more. Like, you know, let's say 6 years ago, lots of artists, lots of individuals just started things, but now it's really becoming corporate world, you know, that corporations are doing campaigns and, investing a lot of money in certain things. Suddenly, money and corporations are playing in the same yard. It used to be more artists and individuals that were just creating. So this is another thing. So I just think that you can see the history of how things happened in the last 5-6 years. We have to be very, like, if somebody is really into it, it's really a daily work just to see what's going on, because there's so much things going on, you know. It's really, you can just sit in front of your computer and just watch what's happening to be informed. And there are companies that hire people just to do that and report about what's happening, and then they're sitting in the next room, what we should do differently. You know, I was in these meetings, you know, it's like really amazing. So, on the other hand, you know, a great idea can always have room. So I don't know if I answered what you're looking
No,
for,
well,
but I
no.
was just honest about my humble experience right now in some places that even the bigger companies in Los Angeles, they're sitting there, and you know, Disney is buying all kind of new startups, and the companies that are being, like, I don't know if you've heard about a company called Magically, that they're having a new interesting technology that's going to come out, and Google invested like $300 million into them. So there's so many companies that are money is invested by big Google or Disney or others that are just trying to get the next thing that's going to take over things that, like, what's going to be the next thing. So it's kind of very interesting times. It's lots of money poured in places that we're never going to see the results of it. And maybe, I don't know, somebody from Thunder Bay will come up with an interesting thing that either a technological invention, but maybe just an idea of creative sharing how you are telling your story to the world. It would be very simple, you know? So it's exciting and frustrating at the same time.
I'd just like to throw a counter.
Sorry.
No, that's great. On the other hand, I think a lot of artists, anyways, are there's these counter movements where there's these reclamations, like, of technical legacies, and you see young artists using old technologies, or I mean, you were even talking about, all this equipment was thrown out, and yet there is a kind of archiving process of these are still useful, because we've developed such a disposable culture, and especially around technology, how things are always just being tossed away and they're no good anymore, because that was so last year. But I think there is a kind of an awareness in the culture that we shouldn't just consider things to be disposable. And for instance, if I went to a Super 8 event in Toronto, it would be a full house. It's like a real movement still, and it's international. And
They started they just released a new camera, right?
yeah, and artists buying up, Polaroid film while it still exists, and now they've reissued, and Kodak is back, and so I think there's a different kind of exchange happening there, which is interesting.
It's very interesting. I agree with you.
But,
yeah, the Super 8 is an example. That was the top thing in the recent technology meeting in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, but I think it is a fetishization of technology, actually, that is part of a fashion system. I don't think what you're describing is new at all. I think it's actually what we've lived with for most of the last century, in terms of.
But you think the confusion today is much bigger?
The scale is larger, but to me, the problem is similar to, like, the problem of environmentalism, or of, like you say, that there's this corporate appropriation, but that's been happening to artists
for sure
for at least a century. It's not new, but to me, it's a similar problem to climate change, in that a technical fix is not going to solve the problem. There needs to be actual structural change in how we inhabit the earth, and that's become more clear to more people all the time, that you can't just have the same new things all the time and keep that same kind of currency going, that same value, that same economy, that that valuing of things for a particular reason that is just about consuming isn't going to work forever. That I think it's at an incredible moment now where so many people are realizing, and in fact, it's not. We can't keep doing that, right? We have to find some other way to do things. So for me, that's the moment, and it's really, really exciting. It's like we have to make so many changes in how we make things as artists and as people living on the earth, and do them differently. And it's not going to be another technical novelty that's going to save us.
I'm sorry if that's what was understood.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were saying.
No, what I'm trying to say, and sorry if I was not clear about it, that you just described the same thing that happens in media.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And I don't think technology is the answer. I just give an example how technology is appearing to be an answer, but I don't think it is.
Okay, so
I'm sorry if I was not clear about it.
Appears,
So what you're just saying is actually the same thing that I see in media, the same thing, you know? But what the example that I gave of all this race for technology is just a kind of very poor race to find solutions by the big companies, you know?
Yeah.
That's what I meant. I didn't think that it's going to come up with an interesting solution.
Yeah.
Sorry if that was understood.
I misunderstood.
So,
I think though too that artists have, you know, and filmmakers have for so long, you know, tried to work outside of those kind of dominant forms to try and create other economies, other networks, other ways of sustaining. And again, it's just it's not a new thing. It's just that the dominant forms, like you say, seem even more bigger every year, or
no, they try to say that they see that like brands and big companies are imitating this kind of approach. You know, trying just to find maybe solutions there. That's what I think we see.
Yeah.
You know, and I talked about big companies that are in totally chaos themselves, but they don't see any solution coming from their big investment in very funny and sometimes irrelevant places.
Right.
So, you know, I'm sorry if it was misunderstood, but that's what I meant. So I talked about this really confused time. Yeah. Sorry.
Question. So do you feel as people making films, like, do you feel a pressure to come up with new ways for storytelling, or do you find sort of a comfort to it, like you know how to tell a story, and you can, you know, like to tell the story in a more not a more traditional way, but like to do a story, you know, and to produce the film that'll just be screened, or do you feel a pressure to come up with a new way to break down that story, and you know?
I felt a pressure for years to be innovative, and that was actually attached to my value, which was converted into monetary value, right? To be innovative in the sense you're talking about, right? As a visual artist and then as a filmmaker. But actually I don't feel that anymore working within communities. And in fact, I'm probably more innovative because I'm not trying to be. I'm just working with what's there. And I'm also not trying for a mass audience. I'm just trying to work in a smaller way that makes sense, you know, in a smaller economic scale. And if that doesn't work outside of that, it's okay with me now. I just need it to work there. So for me, that change in focus has just really completely changed my ambitions and the way I work and everything else. And I just see, I know, like, it's just a different world, I guess, yeah.
I respect very much what she's saying, and but you won't hear this answer in many places, you know. We have to be very honest, you know. And if we would sit here now in, you know, I don't know, in an advertising office in Toronto, or even in many companies that are doing these kind of deliveries, you know, either interactive or social media, etc. No, innovation is like that's what is written on the wall, and you have to do something just because it's different, and there's no respect sometimes to even just try to do something great that is not innovative. So I totally agree with you, and I feel very much the same, but I'm coming from really the reality that it's so different, you know? And even if you go to the Canada Media Fund website, okay? And you read, you know, what they're looking for. So innovation would be the most used words. Innovation is like,
And at the county council?
exactly, you know, and what does it really mean? To do things that they were not done so far. That's what it means, right? So it's very interesting times because I totally agree with you, and I'm more there, but I was very many years in there. And I went through some process myself to understand that it's a crazy, stupid race. You know, but maybe if it would be 2 years ago here, I wouldn't say it like that. And Kelly can be a witness for that.
But can I go, maybe we can go back to the whole, like, our first original discussion at the beginning today was looking at storytelling.
Yeah.
And, okay, storytelling is storytelling, and there's many different ways of doing it, but it's storytelling, and everything has been done already for millennium. Now we're, you know, that you don't need to have, like,
that's why innovation is so
and
stupid.
it's like film. When you're looking at the first films that were done, you look at the films that were done in 1910, 1920, they've done all of those tricks.
Yeah.
Now we can do them better and easier and somewhat, and more people have access to fool around and try things, but pretty well, I mean, one thing that Yarden, who came and he gave a little talk about 360, they did 360 in like 1900. They did it. The guy shot 360 film, Lumiere brother or something, and he made a 360 cinema.
Yeah.
That was 100 years ago.
Yeah.
So really, it's not,
Yeah.
everything has been done.
Yeah.
It's just that we're individuals. We can tell stories from our point of view in our geographical location and our place in time.
But that's why it's not coming from technology. You like to make somebody cry, to make somebody think. It's nothing to do with technology at the end of the day.
Technology is just a tool to tell our stories, and there's many technologies. And the story is told through the medium and through the tech and through the sort of, if there is a narrative, but also through the storyteller, and the same story told by, you know, a number of storytellers, or even just two, will be a different story, because there's always, you know, it's coming from a kind of human, from the mind, and from experience, and from sharing. And so story, you know, there's always something beyond, like, technology is just a means of expression, and or a means of furthering of whatever needs to be expressed. So I think we can't get lost in technology, and I felt pressure too to be innovative and do something new, and I found for my own self, I've sort of been coming back to just writing, and I've always loved writing, and I love media, but that, you know, just to clarify your own thoughts in language, and then to transpose that onto media, but you know, whatever works in that moment for that story, and the diverse ways that we can express, you know, something that needs to be told. And as you said, it's coming from the heart usually, or
Honestly.
from a concept, or, you know.
I think it's, in my opinion, we human beings,
Can you speak louder? I don't hear you.
yeah, we understand the world through stories, and it's in our DNA. You like to tell stories, you like to listen to stories. So if you have a good story, then it doesn't matter what technology you use, it's going to be good. So that's my point. And technology, it wears up very quickly. Like even the new thing that's coming up, if the concept is not good, like the novelty of technology, it will wear off. But if the concept is good, you are telling a good story, it will stay.
Yeah.
So that's the.
And I would just say, as somebody who just presented about, you know, short clips and nonlinear, that it just seems to me that one of the most enduring things is the documentary film, and the stories that are told through documentary. You know, it's not that long ago that documentaries were something you saw on television, never on the big screen. And you know, they didn't go to festivals really the way that they are now. And I really think you know, it's a way, it's a very good way for people to tell their stories, and I'm really interested in hearing from ordinary people as well, and giving them the technology to do things and letting them be creative. When Riaz said this morning that thing for Xbox or whatever was hacked within 24 hours or something like that, I like that. I really like that. You know, somebody, they hacked it for good, right? Not, you know, to destroy people's lives. I think that's where the creativity is. And documentary is allows for a real broad spectrum of creativity.
This is quite new in North America because it's already a bit like that for a while in Europe and other places.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really new here in the last years, and it's amazing to see how it's reinterpreted here, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting. But yeah, I think that we live in more interesting opportunities for participants, you know, and we're all participants, right? But we're also sometimes create, so it's interesting to be in both places, and that's quite unique.
Mm-hmm.
The participants are also creatives.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree?
I totally
Okay.
agree. I totally agree, yeah.
Well, and your story that you talked about, you're making those community films about violence and that, and then in terms of finding the audience, but having the permission, you know, to make that engagement from what you were presenting, that they weren't just subjects, and then you go and you put it on TV and they sell a bunch of commercials for Coca-Cola, and people just consume, you know, somebody's tragic story. But now it's a different way, right? So the fact that they said, no, you can't just, we have to be there when you're showing this, so we see the people who are seeing us. I think that's.
Yeah, I guess for me, like I've become convinced that the kind of the specificity of place, for instance, you know, is such a strong thing. Like if a story comes from a particular place, a particular person in a particular place, and you don't have to make all these claims to be universal in order to sell a million. You just enjoy or appreciate and understand the strength of this story at this time, at this place. For me, that's like just such a major shift in my understanding of what to aspire for, you know, just to understand the most the most basic encounters. And I think it, again, for me, it's like understanding the value of, you know, of leaving resources in the ground, of leaving the earth, you know, the way that, even that kind of thing, which even saying it, you know, can be so divisive, because we're at a point where our entire economy is built on taking those resources out of the ground, right? So those kinds of things, I think, and those kinds of conversations, what you can say about those kinds of things, depending on where you're standing at the moment, right? Yeah.
But you know, this is what I would like to see happening. But you know, when you see what's happening also, you know, with reality TV, and what is, like, you know, when you're talking to young people today, so what is real and what is not real and what is true, what people say, what is documentary actually, then there's so much thing that's trying to be documentary that are not. So, you know, I think it's also, while aspiring to what you're describing that I would like to buy, we also have to be aware of how should education or awareness to things should be clearly, you know, mentioned or discussed, or be part of education, or part of, you know, groups that are trying to create, to understand, you know, the importance of how can you stand up, but also where are things that are trying to imitate it, you know, to sell it as a product. The selling process is so sophisticated, and it's getting more and more sophisticated just because of the competition. So it's using those, you know, true values.
That's true.
You know, and there are websites now how to be like that as a person, you know. And yeah, it's like, really? Do you have to teach that, how to be a truthful person? Anyway, I'm just saying that I'm buying it, but we have to see what is happening around us all the time.
Absolutely.
And just develop tools in a concrete way. How can we win the war? There's a war.
Yeah, but I think also like the film I just finished about alternative, farming, sustainable living, off the grid stuff. I think that kind of, those kinds of films can also just be really, it's really important to show that there are other ways to do things.
Yeah.
And that there are other ways, again, to live, to make things, to create, to make films. There are other ways, rather than just, I think now I'm feeling like it's important to deal with police violence and stuff, but it's really important to also show positive things that are positive, that people, that I can aspire to or start to do, even in small ways, or, in order to go about things differently. That's maybe, a very important also thing to do at the moment. In this moment again
I agree with you.
yeah.
I agree with you. We should go all there. We just have to see what is next for us.
Yes.
Well, I was, well, but let's, what we'll do, we're gonna wrap up. We're gonna wrap up, and what I wanted to do was, I'll just put this on me so you can see me somehow. Okay. Hey everyone out there. Hey Mary, and whoever else is still online. Anyway, so tomorrow, what we will do, we'll reconvene at 9, and I would like everyone to think of a project that they would like to do, and we can only do it in 2 days. We're not going to finish it. We'll just make a plan for editing, but and then, so come up with your idea of what's something that's doable, and it doesn't have to be like it could be anything you want to do, and then you can convince a couple of people to join you on your idea, or maybe you abandon your idea and you join someone else's team, and then what we'll start with in the morning with our mentors is we pitch those ideas of what we want to do, start production over the next day and a half. But the practical things that we need to do, like talking about just basic things, like if we're going to do a little documentary about something, how we're going to plan what location to go to, and what kind of permissions we need, and how to shoot ethically, and what kind of equipment that we need to get, and just those kind of just some basic, more nitty-gritty of how to put these ideas, and then we have like a bunch of practical workshops following that, camera and sound, and then tomorrow, and then you can be sort of forming your groups in the breaks, and then getting those skills that you need, and and if you want to do something that is, if you can convince a few people to join and do your 2-minute idea on what did you call
Western
it?
Ontario.
Western Ontario, not Northwestern Ontario, Western Ontario. Somebody might have a cool idea of how to do some fun animation with maps. And then I think we do have so that's just the morning. So it's just a little bit about, taking an idea and then what you need to do in order to make it happen. And so we can do that with our own ideas and then figure out how we're going to make them happen with like a mini, day and a half shoot. That's all you've got. And then after our coffee break in the morning, then we can talk about some stop time animation, some basic skills with that, and what the potential is there. And then we'll have one on camera with Curtis Jensen. He's a local guy. He's used every kind of camera. He has a drone. He has all kinds of cool gadgets and equipment, and he's traveled, and he's done like amazing shots with just a little point and shoot. So we can, how you can, there's people that make entire films using their iPhone. So just all of those possibilities, and then we can sort of think about what we have for the projects that we're going to make here, what kind of equipment that we have on hand. And then, of course, then before we leave, it will be a session on sound. And Ron's going to lead that, but other people are also going to pitch in on their advice and ways of cost-effective ways of ensuring that planning for sound to have good sound and make sure that.
And that's the creative side of sound.
And that's, yeah, and the whole creative side of sound. You know, all these things, this is just like, you know, an hour and a bit to talk about these things, but it's really important to just get some basics down. And then on Wednesday morning, then we're going to be really planning and a production, what goes into it, and all of that further planning. So tomorrow will be more about like pitching ideas and what to think about and how they could be accomplished, and then a bunch of practical programs, and then the nitty-gritty on the Wednesday morning, and then we're going to go out and start shooting or photocopying, whatever, or doing whatever we want. So anyway, so we'll be streaming again tomorrow, 9 a.m. And then all of these will be recorded onto the web also, so that people can have access. We'll just create our little Docs North community. So bye to you out there. I don't have the whoever's still out there, and we'll see you tomorrow morning. Thanks, everybody.